What's up, guys, and welcome to the show. My name is Chepto Ekboyo, and today we have Don Handa, who is the curator at Nairobi Contemporary Institute. Welcome to the show, Don.
Thank you very much for having me.
Karibu sana to your space.
You're very welcome as well.
So, Don, give us a short background about yourself, and this must include your educational background and your family background.
Okay. Myself, like you said, my name is Don Handa. I am a curator. That's the official story that we're telling people right now. I work here at the Nairobi Contemporary Art Institute. Family background, I am one of two children of a wonderful mother. I lived my entire life in Nairobi, though, traveled to Shago, boarding school at some point. Education, I studied international relations at USIU. However, I did not finish my degree. I actually branched off in another direction, and that's how we ended up here today.
Wow. Your parents agreed for you to branch off without finishing school.
Agree is a strong word. I wouldn't say my mom necessarily agreed, but I think there was a patience and a grace that was afforded to me when I took break from school, and she supported me while I figured out what I needed or where I needed to go with work. And so I don't necessarily think it was a decision that she was happy about, but I appreciate the support and the trust to be able to figure things out, because otherwise I would not be doing the work I'm doing today, which I actually really love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how did you end up becoming a curator?
So when I left uni, I took a break. I was studying international relations. I took a break from school. I think part of it was just maybe a bit of uncertainty about, the degree I was studying and trying to figure out where exactly I was going to go with this, or what is it that I was actually going to do after school. So I took a break, and when I took that break, I've always had an interest in art. But I think at that point then, one of the things I did is I sought out an art space and started working there on a volunteer basis. This is at Payapa Art Center, and during that time I was working with them, helping with the exhibitions, events, and so on and so forth. And I think being in that space and getting a chance to know the history of the space as well, because it is one of the oldest art centers in the country, knowing the history of the space and thinking about the kind of work that they do, then made me begin thinking about what other ways there were to work with artists. If this was a field that I was actually interested in, what possibilities were there? And so that's how I got interested in exhibitions and those processes. And I started thinking seriously about curatorial work as something that I wanted to do. And, it's been an exciting journey since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, a resident curator at Nairobi Contemporary Art Institute, NCAI, sindio?
Yes, NCAI.
Yeah. What kind of art does the gallery showcase, and how can guys plug in, or is it a matter of you guys searching for the artist? Yeah.
I like the way you call me resident artist. It's like I'm resident here for now, but I'm Mr. Worldwide. I move in different places.
For now, yes.
But yeah, so first question is, what kind of art does NCAI showcase? We state our mandate as being the promotion and preservation of contemporary art from East Africa. And what that means broadly is that the focus of the work that we do is in East Africa. So in terms of the artists that we exhibit, the artists that we collaborate with in projects, the artists that we collect, because we are also building a collection of art, and also even the material that we keep, because we're slowly also working on building an archive, so looking at texts, images, books, libraries. The focus is very much on East Africa. What that means is that we're paying attention to what is happening in the East African art scene today, but also looking at the history and thinking about how what happens today sort of connects to what's come before. And so the work that we do in terms of exhibitions then ties directly into that. So our exhibitions typically maybe fall into four kind of broad categories. We have solo exhibitions of artists from East Africa working today, which is the exhibition we have on, for example, Siowia Kiambi, who's a Kenyan artist. We have retrospective exhibitions where we look at older artists and sort of the evolution of their career, so kind of surveying the work that they've done throughout their artistic life. And then we have thematic group shows, and these have to do with exploring particular ideas, and in this sense the artists and the work that they're doing are the way we're thinking about those ideas and looking at what conversations are happening. And then we also have international shows, and with international shows, we're looking at inviting artists from outside East Africa to do exhibitions and projects in our space. But even with that, the intention is always bringing their work into a dialogue with the work of artists working in the space today, and with the audience here. So even when we do those international exhibitions, the themes, the ideas, and even the programming around the exhibitions also has to do very much with both kind of different ways of encountering and thinking about these artists' work, but also trying to see how it also connects with some of the work that artists are doing in here, different practices, different ideas, different relationships among artists and the way they're thinking.
Hey, good stuff.
How can people
so
plug in?
how can artists plug in? Can they pitch, or are you guys going to find them and say you're the right fit for our gallery?
Pitch, I'm hesitant to use the word pitch and maybe use the word proposal. I think currently we're not yet necessarily taking proposals for exhibitions, but that also just has to do with the fact that we're quite a young organization, so we're also kind of working on what our structure is and what do we need to put in place to also be able, when that time comes, to receive proposals, and the process of receiving these proposals, understanding what kind of support you can offer and what that process would look like. So at the moment we are kind of thinking about our exhibitions internally and planning them out, but over and above that, I think it's also worth saying that as a space we're generally very open to collaborating. So if someone does come forward and they have an idea and it's something that we think is interesting to us, we are always very happy to just have a conversation and think about what's possible in terms of the work that we do, because we do have exhibitions that we do. Like I mentioned, we're a collecting institution, so we're building a collection of art from East Africa. We also have a library. We're building a library and resource center, and the intention is to have a space where people can come and learn. So over and above reading, over and above seeing the exhibition, a chance where you can sit, read, do your research. And it's also something that's also growing gradually. We've acquired a few books. We've also had donations to the library from different artists, different organizations. So while we're a small, young organization and we have a vision of what it is that we want to do, we are also very open to what is possible in terms of collaborations, both with other artists and even other art institutions and people working in the arts, curators, art historians, and so on and so forth. I think what I would say is, as an organization, always the doors are open. And for anyone who's curious, admission is completely free. Like, all you just need to do is show up at the door. We are open from Mondays to Fridays from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Wow. On Saturdays, we're open from 11 to 6, and there's no cost. You just come, look, spend as much time as you need, ask your questions, sit in the library, look at the exhibitions. The intention is that it's a space that's open to everyone. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wakenya mmesikia?
Tembeni.
At Sia Wazungu Kujeni. It's actually at Roslyn Mall, 4th floor or rooftop?
3rd floor.
3rd floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You take your mat, get off at Roslyn, literally cross the road, Panda Ju. In fact, if you're not coming from the basement, it's just one flight of stairs. Yeah. So we're just from the pandemic. How did you survive, considering art is something that people must look at and these spaces were mostly closed? I think also with the pandemic, in terms of surviving, I'm really lucky that for the entire duration of this pandemic, I was employed. I hadn't joined NCAI yet, but I was working at a different space. I was working at Circle Art Gallery in Nairobi. So in that regard, I was fortunate that throughout I had a steady income. Now, in terms of how we thought about how work gets seen, I think already as it is between sort of, technology and the internet, it is possible to circulate information about art and images and so on in different ways. And while the organization is based here in Nairobi, had quite a lot of networks internationally. But especially in the early days of the pandemic, the focus was very much on thinking about what is possible to do online. So in terms of doing online exhibitions, sharing portfolios of works, doing talks and so on and so forth, but thinking carefully about how we could use the online space. So even, updating our website to make sure all artists' information is up to date, keeping the artsy page up to date. So trying to use those online tools to continue highlighting the work of artists and connecting with different audiences, collectors, and so on and so forth. And then after having done that, then now slowly opening up back again. So even when the space opened, initially it was shorter hours on an appointment basis. We'd limit the number of people we could have in the space at a time. So little by little, that is how the organization tried to manage that space until when we could fully reopen again. Yeah.
What would you say is your greatest challenge as a curator?
Ooh, greatest.
or just challenges?
I think challenges vary. That's a hard question to answer, but I think in many ways, and which is what NCAI is trying to do as an organization, and which is what I feel we need a lot of support in generally. Support for the work, support for making, and I think that is true for curators. I think it's true for artists, but financial support in terms of resources to be able to take on projects, support to be able to do research, and also support that gives people time and space to really get into their process. So to conduct research, to experiment, to think through their ideas before having then to present them, or to lay them out in the form of an exhibition or a research publication, whatever the format one is working with. And I think that support takes different forms. That support is, material support, so finances and resources. That is also having spaces where one can see and spend time with work and learn. That is, being able to build relationships with your peers and really setting up relationships that allow you to think together. So there's also trying to work on building a kind of community that allows a continuous dialogue among each other, and that support even has to be just community building. But I think, it's those challenges. I think that's what I would say is support research, support project, support experimentation, support the thinking that makes it possible for us to see these different kind of artistic outputs, these different exhibition projects. And I think also limited spaces often means apart from the few that are in Nairobi, you have to travel to see the work of artists who are living and working in the same city as you, in the same country as you. So it doesn't hurt to build more spaces to show art. It doesn't hurt to go out and see art. Something I do appreciate is all galleries in the city are free, which is great. So, if you have a Saturday afternoon to kill, go out, see the work, have a conversation among your friends. If you're in a position to meet the artist, talk to them, have a chat with them. But I think it's really important that we think about making art something that is a part of our lives. You think about, you look at, you talk to, you share, you buy if you can, all those different ways. All those are little things that help in making the work possible.
You've said a lot of work being showed in this gallery is a collaboration between you, meaning the gallery, and the artist. How do you come up as the gallery? How do you come up with new ideas on what to showcase?
We like to call ourselves an institute more so than a gallery, and that's just because we're thinking about the work that we're doing as extending even beyond just exhibitions. But I think the word collaboration is important because for any exhibition, whether it's a group exhibition or it's a solo exhibition, how that comes together, the final form that exhibition takes, the activities that happen, all of those are things that happen in conversation with the artist. And the idea is always thinking about what is the best way to highlight and sort of call attention to the work that this person is doing, the thought that they're engaging in, the ideas that they're interested in. And so even in terms of thinking of ideas for work, it's a lot of research, it's a lot of looking, and it's just trying to really be attentive to the things that artists are doing, the things that they are thinking about, and how those ideas perhaps connect to, I guess, a larger cultural context or political context. Because also the work that artists do is they think about the lives that we're living, and the work that we see is an output of that. So I think in many ways, try and follow the art as a way for ideas. What are artists thinking about? Where are they working? What are the questions they're asking? Those are the things that kind of inform then, what is possible in terms of exhibitions? What kind of projects can you collaborate on? What kind of conversations can you have?
When you talk about art, it's like there's no line. The line is so blurred that anything can pass and be art. What line will the Institute not cross?
What line? Rather than say what line we won't cross, because I feel certainly the way I see it or the way I think about it, I don't have hard and fast rules about, only interested in this kind of work or only interested in this material or whatever. But I think we are interested in work that is thought-provoking. I think for me, the thing I really, really enjoy about art in all its forms is, art is, for me, it's the space of, it's about possibilities. Possibility, what can you do, both in terms of your ideas, in terms of your expression, but even in terms of the materials that you're using, the way you're interacting in space, it is a space of possibility. And so I think in terms of the exhibitions that we do and the artists we work with, I think we're interested in artists who are sort of expanding those limits, artists who are saying this is also something else that can be said, this is a way this thing can be thought about, this is a way this material, this space, this format can be expanded, can be extended, can be shifted. I think that's what we're looking for, because I really do believe that artists do that for us as a society, and so we're thinking about how do we highlight those artists. So I don't know if there's any hard and fast rules, but it's very case by case basis. You move from one artist to the next. You get to know the work that they're doing. You get to know the context they're working in, and that informs, what you can then do with their work, or what kind of things you can work together on. Yeah.
So, which artist would you say is your favorite?
Ooh,
Dead or alive?
That's hard.
Okay, top of mind. Give me like 3.
Again, it's what I'm going to say is the artist we're showing right now, for example, Sioia Kiambi is a Kenyan artist. The exhibition we have is a solo exhibition, and it's photography, it's sculpture, it's installation, it's video. That is an artist whose work I really, really like. I like the willingness to expand the kind of forms that she works. So you have an artist who doesn't limit herself to one medium. She'll work in video, she'll work in performance, she'll work in photography. Have an artist who really spends time developing a thought. So there's a lot of research, both in terms of the ideas, but even in terms of the materials and the forms and what's possible. You have an artist who's seeing how an idea can evolve. So each work is kind of connected to another work, directly or indirectly, but the practice as a whole is this thing that's always expanding and always returning to certain ideas and thinking about what can be said, what can be thought about those things. So that is one artist that I really, really like. And I think, this exhibition, by the way, is on until the 30th of June. So come and see it. I promise it's worthwhile. So for now, I'm going to name Sioia Kiambi as an artist. I enjoy her work. I'm very interested in the work that she does. And I find she also has a very, very generous person, very generous spirit. Yeah.
What is NCAI doing to increase the diversity of art that you guys showcase? The variety. I think we are interested in variety, certainly. I think the way we're trying to go about it is thinking about also how we organize our exhibitions, A retrospective will give you a very different experience because you're trying to look at an artist and see the work that they've done and how it's evolved over time. A solo exhibition is focusing on a particular body of work by a particular artist. So that's, you're looking at someone who's maybe done different things, but in this instance, we're zeroing in on a particular series or a particular area of work. A thematic group exhibition is trying to bring different voices and looking at how they've thought about different things or how they interface. But I think ultimately what I'd say is we are not restricted in terms of the medium or the format. We are trying to look at what is the work, and by what is the work is what is the thought, what is the material, how is this artist interacting with the ideas, their audience, the space, all these things. And I think you'll find, if you're willing to be open in that regard, other than saying, we show mainly paintings or we show mainly sculpture, but because there's so much variety in terms of the work that artists make, if there's not variety in terms of the exhibitions that we do, then that's also something for us to think a little bit more about and see what we're not doing correctly. Yeah. Okay.
I think the variety is there by default. Just in Kenya alone, in Nairobi alone, there's artists working in so many different ways, in so many interesting ways. So, you don't lack. Yeah, you don't lack. Yeah, there's quite a lot. If anything, there's more than we can handle. But also, we're here for the long term, so we are hoping there'll be opportunity to work with more and more artists in more and more ways for the near and far future.
Okay. So what would you say is the difference between a curator and a conservator? Or what's the meaning, since most people do not know?
I think for me, when I think about a conservator, I think about someone whose job it is basically maintaining the integrity of objects, artwork. So someone who's been working in an institution, painting, sculpture, different kind of artifacts, and there's someone whose job it is to know how these things are made, what is the appropriate way to handle them, what is the appropriate way to store them, and so on and so forth. Whereas with a curator, perhaps, but I think it's worth saying that depending on the space that one is working in, sometimes the work that a curator does also overlaps with the work that a conservator does. But I would say, certainly in my experience, or in the space that I'm working with right now, the focus as a curator is very much on the development of exhibitions, and also different kinds of projects and programs in the space of these exhibitions. But then with the exhibitions, also thinking about public programming, so workshops, talks, stuff online, stuff in person, activities, writing and doing research on artists and artwork. So that very much is perhaps where the focus is within the space of NCAI. We do not have an in-house conservator, but if someone wants to do a little conservation work on the side, pro bono, please reach out to us. We're also very interested in learning these skills. Yeah, and I think it's also, as the organization grows, we'll see how also what the role of a curator becomes. It will shift as the organization shifts as well. It will grow. We'll get more people. I think as the team grows, we will need to maybe work with conservators at some point. There are two distinct jobs. And I think for me, the difficulty in distinguish is I think also like with a curator, the remit can be quite broad. And so it varies depending on the context, the situation, the institution, the project.
Yeah. So in short, a curator comes up with ideas of a particular show, and a conservator is mostly maintenance of the art itself or preservation.
Yeah. But then some institutions have curators whose work depends again.
Both.
Yeah. Some curators do work that predominantly has to do with conservation and management of collections more so than it is to do with programming and exhibitions.
As someone who's in the art field, I believe you're able to notice something that is really worth in terms of price.
Oh Lord, pricing.
And also in terms of quality of work.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have a collection at home? And how does that collection look like? Your private collection?
I do have a collection. Is it a collection if you didn't buy any of the things? I do have some artworks. Most of them are just like quite a few of my friends are artists. I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of different artists, and so a lot of the works that I in my house are very much gifts from friends. So I really cherish them because it's not easy to come by, and so there are things that in a way also speak to like my relationship with these people, the work we've done together, their place in my life. But yeah, I do have some drawings, some photographs, nothing too extravagant. Yeah, there's one or two things at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know the Institute does not sell art, but still I wanted to know, being a curator, how do you come up with the pricing if you were to work in a gallery that, like the Cycle, I think they were selling? So how do you determine the pricing of an art piece?
I'm hesitant to actually speak about pricing of artwork altogether just because it's...
like what determines the price?
A lot of things.
List them.
I probably won't even give an exhaustive list. You're looking at the nature of the work itself in terms of literally just the material production, which varies widely depending on the kind of work an artist is making, the career level of the artist, the availability of the work. It's so many different things, honestly. I think I'd even say it's maybe, okay, not so fast to say it was a case-by-case basis, but there's all these different factors that one has to think about when you think about the pricing of work. I don't have to do that work in my current capacity, which it can be quite challenging, so I'm happy that I don't. But I would actually say maybe a dealer might be better positioned to answer this question than myself. Yeah, because there might be things I might not account for. Maybe there's things that I'm thinking about that aren't a factor. So yeah, it's a tricky business, and I think someone who's a professional dealer maybe would be better suited to give a more clear answer on what that looks like, because even the prices of artworks also vary wildly depending on the artist, the place, the gallery, and so on and so forth. Okay.
So who has the last word? Is it the artist or the dealer when it comes to pricing?
In my experience, working in a commercial space, the last word was always the artist. Of course, we would perhaps offer some recommendations, or maybe if we were sitting with the artist and discussing prices, maybe offer up some considerations and some potential prices. But ultimately, if the artist says this is the price of the work, then this is the price of the work. Yeah, I don't know if it's different in other spaces, but in my experience, the last word always lay with the artist.
When I look at the Kenyan contemporary stock, this other side of artists. Let's leave the dancers, the actors, the musicians. Those
the
ones
more
are
visual
thriving.
artists, perhaps.
Yes, those ones are more thriving in this country. So I'm talking in terms of these artists, the artists that do installation, the painters, the graffiti artists. It's not mainstream in the country. How can we improve that so that the local appreciate it more? Apart from the few, it's like a few clique of people who know this is the galleries I can go. These are the people who are doing the most in the industry, while the other part of the country is somehow lost. So how can we bring everyone together to appreciate art?
I think first, I think I would say in terms of access and even appreciating artwork, I don't think it's that people are lost. I think there's limited spaces that you can encounter art. I think I've found, regardless of whether or not one knows about art or you're an expert, like people are generally very willing to engage with our work. When it's a painting, a drawing, people need to look at it and think about it and talk about it. So I think maybe the work is in more trying to open up more spaces where people can encounter art, so that also it becomes something that's very much just a part of the things that we think about every day. Because I think that's why, for example, I was saying we are free, because the intention is even if you walk past the door and you wonder, oh, I've never been here, let me go, you should be able to go. So I think in terms of maybe it's more about working on increasing visibility for artists, thinking about the different ways you can support the work that they can make so their careers, their practices can also grow and expand. But I think in terms of people learning to appreciate art, at the end of the day, I think if there's a space and there's a work of art and someone is in that space, I find most, if not all the time, people are willing to engage with that work. Now, they may agree, they may disagree, they may think it's good, they may think it's bad, but I think very often people are generally quite open. And so perhaps it's more a structural question of thinking about how many spaces are there. Is art something that we're talking about in schools? Is something that we're highlighting when you write in media and so on and so forth, so that then we also make it very much a part of the everyday conversation.
Is NCAI as an organization open to collaborating with other galleries and organizations?
Yes, we are. And we are quite new, but we do collaborate. And those collaborations sometimes are even something as simple like where you're doing an exhibition, for example, a retrospective exhibition, and so you're borrowing a work from a collector who's bought our work a few years ago. So in the exhibition before this one, he collaborated with some collectors from different parts of the world, an institution in Germany to lend some work. We've collaborated with the Turn program in Germany to do artist residencies. We've collaborated with artists here in Nairobi to do workshops, to do programs. So I think collaboration for us is, we can't do the work that we were trying to do if we're unwilling to collaborate, because also we're as individuals, no one person can do everything, and sometimes you get further along if you're willing to also bring other people in the space to think about you with what you're trying to do, and then execute those ideas. So yeah, we are open to collaboration, to artists who have ideas, to curators who have things they might want to pitch, to organizations who are interested in thinking about how they can support the visual arts or how they can support NCAI as an organization. Come to us and let's have a conversation. Yeah. Okay. The work doesn't happen without collaboration. Yeah.
As someone who has seen a lot of artistic works,
yeah.
Which particular collection or showcase spoke to you emotionally? It doesn't have to be the ones that you have actually worked on. That spoke to you, that got you.
Ooh. Even that is a long list. But I think most recently, I had the privilege of seeing this exhibition in South Africa called When Rain Clouds Gather. And it was an exhibition of South African women artists. And I just really enjoyed that. There was quite a variety in terms of work. I think it was spanning almost 60 years, if not more. But I think it was great to see this exhibition dedicated to these artists and thinking about some of the things that informed the way they work, some of the ideas that showed up in their work, how their work evolved over the years, and also kind of connecting the way they were working to also the history and the time they were working in, some of the things that they were responding to, and also the variety. There was sculpture, photography, drawing, printmaking. But I think for me, that's an exhibition that I think a lot about just in terms of the content of the exhibition. I also really enjoyed how the exhibition was physically laid out. So, always when you're thinking about curating, you always think about, what's an interesting exhibition? How did they use the space in an interesting way? What did they incorporate into the space that I think is interesting? And that for me was an exhibition that I quite enjoyed. Also, I like the title is also the title of a book that I really like, When Rain Clouds Gather by Bessie Head. So that was a nice little detail.
Everything merged into this goodness.
Everything came together. The art was arting.
That's a nice one. When I look at the local museums, they carry a lot of art in terms of artifacts and the chronology of what happened in the past, be it fossil or the Mau Mau. It's like a history of the country, basically. How can we make it modern? Especially when I'm a museum person and I go to a lot of museums, and I find it's not the museum I went to in primary school. It's the same now? I want it to evolve. I want it to be more modernized and feature new things that Gen Zs will be interested about.
I think I can't speak to, I've never worked, for example, in the National Museums of Kenya, so I can't speak to sort of the internal operations, the structure and how programming is organized. But what I would say is maybe to think about, for example, like the space that I am working in. I think for us, the thing in terms of making it something that's more engaging is trying to think about what we can do in the ways of programming. So, once you've put up the exhibition and the exhibition looks good, what then? So with this exhibition, for example, we've had a walkabout where sort of a curator is going through this, talking with people about the work. We've had an artist talk when Siowia Kiambi did the performance. After the performance, he had a Q&A. When you walk into the exhibition, there's a guide to the exhibition, but then there's also a little sort of activity sheet that's inviting you to do some things. The exhibition is based on this character called Kaspale. And Kaspale is supposed to be a kind of tool for intervention. So it's, make your own Kaspale or write a letter to Kaspale, trying to share stuff online. I think the work, and I think it's a lot of work, and so even us as a space, we're always thinking about how can we do more and how can we do it better. But I think it's always about thinking about how do you activate these spaces? How do you make it so that people feel like when they come in, there's different ways they can engage with the work over and above just kind of looking. And I think even looking alone is not a passive exercise. You're looking at things, you're thinking about ideas, you're bringing in your knowledge and experience from other places. But I guess the work is thinking about how do you extend that a little bit more, what kind of interactions. So this work, for example, includes sculptures, ceramic works. One of the things we're going to do is the artists and the space, we're organizing a workshop with ceramics with the space where the artist works. And these are also just small ways of also getting people to feel like, you can interact with these works in different ways. You can get a sense of how they're made and how they come into being over and above just kind of what is the thing that's presented to you at the very end. But I think it's a question of programming and how we think about programming and how we think about how these things, for example, what's something that was made or an event that happened 40 years ago, 60 years and 90 years ago, how is that thing connected to our present? What is its relevance? And then that kind of guides on how you can set up different kinds of interactions with people and the material. Yeah.
What kind of theme or object will you want to see come to life?
I don't know if there's a thing or object per se, but I would say, particularly with regards to art, I really enjoy artists who make space for speculation. So there's sort of like the reality, but also kind of playing around with fiction and playing around with what's possible, really allowing the imagination to expand sort of what stories exist and how we can think of. I think speculation for me, speculation and fiction and imagination, thinking about those as ways to extend the sort of official story or the official narrative around our communities and our history as a culture is something that I really enjoy and something that I'm really interested in the way artists work and in the way artists think. And I mean, now that plays out in different formats depending on what the artist is doing, their medium or their subject. But I find as a strategy for thinking about the world, it can give some very interesting results. Yeah. And it's always about, like I said earlier on, it's about expanding what's possible in terms of what you can do, but even what you can think and how you can be in the world, stretching those limits and thinking about, how else can we move through the world? How else can we think about the world that we live in? Yeah.
Being someone who has been in this industry for years.
Not very many, for what it's worth.
How
I'm
many
also
years?
figuring it out as I go along.
How many years would you say?
A lot shorter than other people.
Okay, let's maintain the years.
Yeah.
What mistakes do you see the young artist making? And what advice will you give the young artist coming up in general?
I'm not going to talk about mistakes. Instead, what I will say is, when it comes to work, rigor is really important in your research, in developing your ideas, in working with your materials, in thinking about what you're doing and how the work sort of is made, both physically, materially, but also intellectually. Rigor is really, really important. So you're really kind of plumbing the depths of your subject and thinking very carefully about what you're doing and what you're trying to say and why. And I think that is something for which any artist will benefit from, young, old. I just think that's something that helps in terms of the quality of work that one is able to make. And then I guess be bold. Like, if you're going with an idea, commit to that idea and run with it and see where it can take you, and be open to seeing the different places this idea can lead you. I think it's very important to, to be bold and to really lean into the process and allow for that journey to happen. Yeah. Don't say, well, I'm a painter and I make paintings, so I can't try X. Everything is fair game. But then now when you show up for the work, really be willing to commit fully and do it in a way that's rigorous. Yeah. I think that's a big part of how art is made, how good work is made. Yeah. And an artist recently said, advice and said, be honest with yourself and the people around you. And I think that's maybe something that goes for all of us, not just artists in general, but any person in your life and in your work. Yeah.
There's one showcase I saw, but it wasn't an art showcase. It was an art piece in a gemstone showcase. So this Kenyan artist is called Kariuki and Chow. They're two artists, and they deal with the precious stones art, meaning they use gemstone, the gold, the all the other, what was it called? The tanzanite, all the precious stones. And I saw it is a very interesting kind of art. So will we ever see a gemstone collection? Yeah. I mean, because I'm thinking it's
if you're out there and you want to buy some gemstones, or you want to please do. I think what I'll say is I don't see why not. If an artist is working with gemstones, then that's their material. The next question is, what are they doing with the gemstones?
They were actually putting it on canvas.
I don't see why not.
I was really surprised.
Like I said, we don't limit ourselves depending on media. It's about the quality of the work. The quality of work is about how it looks, how it made, how it how it works, for lack of a better expression, but also what the artist is trying to do and what the artist is thinking about. So, yeah. If we have video and we have sculpture and we had photographs and we have paintings, why can't we have gemstones? I mean, when the time comes, we'll need to think about insurance, but we'll cross that bridge if we get to it.
Also, the question comes in, what if the stones are very precious, but the visual is whack, or it's just bad?
Then that's
how now does that work?
But then those are the conversations that you sort of have to have with an artist when you're talking about the work. Yeah, maybe you have really nice gemstones, but the thing that you're doing with gemstones isn't doing much. Yeah, then that's, if you're in that space, I don't know, as a fellow artist, as a curator, as a critic, those are the things you're talking about when you're speaking about the work and trying to figure out what is happening, what is the artist trying to do, what is the artist trying to say. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Don.
Thank you.
Come to the end of the show.
That was nice, relatively painless.
We will definitely be back.
Oh, good, I'm glad.
Hey, guys, request more, and then
have a request.
This again.
Artists. This city has, I'm not even going to say this region, this city, Nairobi, has very interesting artists, very brilliant artists doing very interesting things, and thinking about Kenya as a place, as a community, in very interesting ways. So, get those people. We are talking about how do we get more people to, to be invested in art. I think that can help. Get more artists, give them space to tell their stories.
Yeah. Okay. I'm coming for you guys. Thank you guys for watching the episode. Please subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.